Mazzer, a name that for years has been respected in the espresso grinding world. Ceado, the new kid on the block with some innovative new features. Hey espresso lovers, Marc here from Whole Latte Love. Today, an in-depth comparison of nearly identically priced, higher-end prosumer level grinders from Mazzer and Ceado. From Mazzer, it's the mini electronic, which comes in the type A and B variations, and from Ceado, the new E37J, available in black or silver. In this video, I'll have results of side-by-side testing of the grinders for parameters like grind retention, grinding speed, dosing accuracy, and noise levels. I'll have all the info on specs like motor power, burrs, and size, plus what it's like to use each grinder in the real world, including close evaluation of grind quality and distribution, build quality, and ease of maintenance. So a lot to cover here, and we'll get to those test results in a minute, but first the basics. Again, these are prosumer level, commercial capable 64mm flat burr grinders. All feature stepless, infinite grind size adjustment. They're built to last a lifetime with no plastic in the housings or internal components. They have presets for timed grinding or can grind manually on demand. Now, the most obvious basic difference, the Mazzers use a funnel for directing coffee to a portafilter, while the Ceado delivers via a chute. Looking at other specs, again, 64mm flat stainless burrs. The Mazzers use a 250-watt motor, while the Ceado has more power with a 300-watt motor. Those motors spin the burrs at 1600 RPM in the Mazzers and 1380 in the Ceado. So a little more torque for the Ceado with the more powerful motor and lower RPMs. Hopper capacity for each is about 21 ounces and height is similar at about 17 inches. Another notable difference are warranty periods. It's 2 years on the Mazzers and 3 years for the Ceado. So on paper, these grinders are relatively similar, but look a little closer and there are some distinct and important differences you should be aware of before making a purchase decision. For me, one of the most important ones is in the mechanics of the top burr and grinding chamber. So let's take a look at those grinding chambers. On the Mazzer, it's a traditional setup. Loosen a stop screw and turn out the adjustment collar. On the Ceado, remove 3 screws and the entire top plate adjustment mechanism and top burr come out as a single unit. Now there's a couple significant benefits to that design, which is unique to some Ceado grinders. More on that in a second. Back over on the Mazzer, the threaded adjustment collar comes out on its own. Below that, the burr is mounted to a carrier which rides on 3 springs. So again, a couple of very different setups. When you open up the Mazzer, you always lose the grind setting. That means recalibrating and dialing in your grind size again. Also, you have to be careful you don't cross-thread the adjustment collar when you put it back together. Now, that's typical for grinders set up this way, but for me, the bigger issue is how the grinding chamber is open to those springs and the threads of the adjustment collar. Coffee dust and oils will gum things up. When the fine threads get gunked up, it's only a matter of time before grind size adjustment can become difficult. On the Ceado, it's a totally different story. You don't lose calibration when you take things apart. You don't even lose your grind setting, and with the adjustment threads sealed off from the grinding chamber, they don't get clogged up with coffee dust and oils, so grind size adjustment is always smooth and not jumpy. The Ceado setup is, in my opinion, one of the most significant recent innovations in grinder design. It makes use and maintenance just a heck of a lot easier. A couple other things to take a look at here. First are the nuts at the top of the motor shafts. On the Mazzer, it's a 6-point nut. On the Ceado, the cap nut is smooth. Second, the top burr on the Ceado is rock solid. With the way it's mounted, it cannot move around. On the Mazzer, a very different story. With the burr carrier resting on those springs, there is potential for variations in vertical space between the burrs changing ever so slightly when you're grinding. And there's also potential for horizontal movement of the top burr, as you can see with the play here. Is that a big deal? It might be hard to measure the effect, but in my mind, I'm way more comfortable with the locked-in design of the Ceado. The Mazzer Minis and Ceado E37J are timed grinders, and you can do manual on-demand grinding as well. On the Mazzer Mini Electronic A, it's all controlled from a touchpad on top of the dosing funnel. You program single and double dosing times in 0.05 of a second intervals. To start a dose, push the single or double button, or you can dose manually by pressing the button with the finger on it. On the Electronic B model, you use a screwdriver to set grind time. A bit of guesswork with that, as there's no indication as to what the actual time is. A portafilter activated switch starts the dose. Press once for a single and twice to get a double. To get a manual dose, push in and hold that switch. On the E37J, you can program single and double shot doses by time in 1/10 of a second intervals or dose manually. So grinding starts when the portafilter activated switch is pushed in and stops when released. You can change the start mode to pulse off, pulse on, or dose with start. With pulse off, the portafilter activated switch must be held in place for the entire dose. If you let go, you can push it again to continue the dose. With pulse on, a single push and release of the switch delivers the entire dose selected on the control panel. When set to dose with start, a single push with a portafilter delivers a single dose, and a quick double push delivers a double dose. Also on the control panel, you can access dose counters for single, double, and total doses, warn burr alerts, and change the language. Overall, the Ceado has more options for setting up the grinder to work in the way you like. I also like how the Ceado's display shows the grind time prior to starting and counts down the seconds in the display while in progress. You won't get that information on the Mazzers. On to test results. For the test, I dialed in each grinder to a grind size that produced a standard 2-ounce double espresso in 25 seconds from first drip using a 17-gram coffee dose. Now, something I noticed when dialing in the grinders, the Mazzer produced a larger change in grind size for equivalent distant moves of the adjustment as compared to the Ceado. With finer adjustment control on the Ceado, it was easier to dial in. On the Mazzer Mini, it took 14.7 seconds to grind the 17 grams. On the Ceado, it took 9.3 seconds. Doing the math, the Mazzer ground 1.2 grams per second, and the Ceado was 50% faster, grinding 1.8 grams per second. To test time dosing accuracy, I ground for a double 5 times on each grinder and weighed the result to determine the maximum dose-to-dose variation. It came in at 0.45 grams on the Mazzer and 0.39 grams on the Ceado. So both grinders are extremely consistent. For reference, a half-gram variation in a 17-gram dose is a variation of less than 3%. Next, I tested for grind retention. That's how much ground coffee remains in the grinder. For this, I closed the hopper and ground until no whole beans remain and no more ground coffee exited the grinders. I then carefully took the grinders apart, cleaned out any remaining ground coffee, and weighed the result. The Mazzer retained 3.6 grams and the Ceado came in at 5.2 grams. So if it's been a while since the last grind cycle and you want a completely fresh dose, you will need to run these grinders for about 3 seconds to expel any retained grinds. Taking a look at sound levels, the Ceado is significantly quieter, running a good 5 to 10 decibels below the Mazzer on average. Now, these are not lab quality measurements, but I will say the Ceado has a much smoother and lower note than the Mazzer. Last thing to check out is grounds quality and distribution into a portafilter. Both grinders can accommodate single, double, and bottomless portafilters hands-free. On the Mazzer, they rest on a long supporting arm. On the Ceado, portafilters are held in place by an adjustable hook. Now, both do a good job with the grinds falling into the center of the portafilter. Now, on the Mazzer, you can slide the portafilter back and forth a bit to hit center. Quality of grinds is excellent, relatively fluffy and clump-free for the most part. With the coffee I was using, the Ceado seemed to produce a slight bit less clumping, but that's somewhat subjective judgment. So I'll leave you with my final opinions on these grinders. The Mazzer Minis, yeah, they've been around for a while. They are a respected name and they do a fine job, but at the same price, well, it's hard to not prefer the Ceado. The controls are easier to use and give you more information. The screwdriver adjustment of timing on the Mini B model would honestly drive me kind of nuts. Then there's the fact that the Ceado is faster and quieter. But the stuff I love the most more precise adjustment when dialing in grind size, how it's easy to get into the grinding chamber of the Ceado. 3 screws and you're in with no need to recalibrate and no loss of grind setting. And then there's the solid mounting of that top burr. No possibility of horizontal or vertical movement like you'll find in the Mazzer setup. And the Ceado grind adjustment is sealed off from the grinding chamber. That's not the case on the Mazzer. Over time, adjustment threads get gummed up with coffee oils and dust, making grind adjustment more difficult. And cleaning things up in there, yeah, it's going to be a chore. Now, don't get me wrong, the Mazzer is a fine grinder. It's accurate, built solidly, and has a lot of love in the espresso community. In the end, however, the Ceado has innovated while the Mazzer is kind of the same as it ever was. These innovations make the Ceado easier to use and maintain, and in my opinion, a better grinder for the same money. What do you think? Use those comments and let me know. That's the Mazzer Mini Electronic A and B models and the Ceado E37J. All are available now at Whole Latte Love. I'm Mark, thanks for watching, and I hope you subscribe and come back soon for more of the good stuff on everything coffee, brought to you by Whole Latte Love. Want to learn more? Subscribe now so you'll know about the latest videos on everything coffee from Whole Latte Love.